Previously on a digital journey, we found out what happens when you get a chance to make a bid really fast and how hard it can be to meet all the requirements, the risk of losing a bid, and the constant pressure to deal with a deluge of information. And we looked at some new ideas. We looked at a way to create an abstract version of a crushing machine that allowed us to connect parts, functions, and schematics, and expand on each at will. We looked at how to bring all of these different parts together with a pre-planning tool and generate a concise estimate. That updates automatically when you add or subtract objects to the machine. We showed that when we plan the objects of our design around a database that links parts and functions, which is the engine that drives this ePlan platform, you absolutely can take a project, any project, and bid it fast. We did, and we got the job. Hey, it's going to be smooth sailing from here on out. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of A Digital Journey. It's a 12-part series exploring how to do stuff a little faster, hopefully a little better with less effort. I will be your moderator, Andrew Fortenberry. After the episode, we will have a Q&A session. So during this episode, please post any questions in the chat and we will be sure to answer them. Today, we will look at how to deal with a bunch of parts that a customer must have. The reasons behind these requirements and what methods we can bring it to bear. I believe Mr. Sergio Brinkhouse has some insights on this. So Sergio, passing the ball in your court.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone for attending. And let's get this show on the road. All right, so congratulations, of course, in effect. The bid has been accepted. The offer has been signed. During the procedure, though, we notice a few hurdles that might get in the way of a successful project, right? So they want their documentation to look a certain way. No, not a problem. They also want a particular set of device symbol representations. All right, check. As well as the massive list of components that they must have. Yeah, that's not an issue. The reason for the lists varies from national regulations such as norms and standards, or devices that were tested and approved, as well as the assurance that these can be easily adjusted or changed as easy as possible in the case of, interchangeability or maybe just plain old habit. So a lot of companies, or at least most, have an approved vendor list and an approved component list. This is required for a successful bid. So the reason for these lists varies and so on and so forth, as we mentioned earlier. So, and also this list varies from vendor types as well as, certain devices that can go from 1,000 to tens of thousands of individual parts. So a lot of things to take into consideration in this particular environment. All right. So you combine all of this with the very real pressures of price, project schedule, and doing all of the other little tidbits in one's job. The act of sorting through the parts and can get really overwhelming. Designers and project management will push back because they don't have time to do everything. As a result, the project gets delayed and frustrations mount. When there is enough risk of missing a deadline or losing a bid, the typical reaction is to assign the work to a specialist, that only procures materials. So basically, we're looking into getting purchasing agents. The purchasing agent doesn't necessarily understand the function of the part, but he or she establishes a relationship with the vendor to get the best price and the best availability. This method actually works to a point, and the point usually when purchasing agents run out of the capacity and when the project needs a new series of parts that are unfamiliar to the purchasing agent, well, then a few options arise. So keep hiring new purchasing agents or restrict the number of parts available. In either case, the purchasing department will start evolving and develop its own rules and waylay similar pressures. A typical management response for the additional work is to add more staff if financially possible. And then eventually the parts start taking longer to process, projects take longer to bid, and frustration returns, and so on and so forth. So if you can relieve some of the stresses of repetitive work, to search for parts and to fit your design, your price, and ultimately when your customer wants, regardless if it's something that purchasing hasn't seen before when they got the quote. So you can win yourself a lot of breathing room and get a lot of work done faster and easier. All right. So to recap, bid comes in, we get a list of components, run it through the ePlan Blender Supreme, and voila. No more pain, no more hassles, and at least, for the very least at least, less things to worry about, right? So years added to due to the fact that you have a stress-free environment, hopefully. All right, so let's take a look at this and how it all works out. So what we have here is, of course, our project. We know the bid came in for this particular machine type. We talked about it last week. And of course, now we have an approved component list. So what can we do with this? So usually these lists are most typically found in Excel spreadsheets or text files and whatnot. So these lists, of course, one of the aspects that we can utilize these lists are in our ePlan environment are to first confirm prior to doing the design work, prior to doing some of the schematic work, and even the panel layout, is to confirm that these parts exist in my parts database. Of course, the typical work through or workload would be to go through a catalog, confirm that these parts are in our system so that we have all the aspects to be able to use. So one of these tools that we have in place in ePlan, of course, is to be able to confirm this alongside the data portal. Now, the data portal having two tiers of functionality, the free tier and the professional tier. In the professional tier, what you can do is you can actually go into your shopping cart and you have the option to upload a list of components. So our approved component list can be uploaded to the data portal to confirm if these parts are available and to actually add them into your parts database so you can start to do your design. So we can select here the functionality. We can choose a file. And of course, this file would be in a CSV format. So if you get an Excel spreadsheet, you can just, resave that as a CSV. And basically what we're going to do from this point is select this file and upload it to the data portal. So what happens next, and of course we can choose here to delete the shopping cart in case you did this in the past. So just to make sure you always start from a clean shopping cart inside the data portal environment. So when we hit submit here, what happens now is that the system checks based on that list that you uploaded, and it's stated you have 57 records, of which 50 parts were found in the data portal. So he can show you here is giving you a list of all the components he found. And the beauty of this feature functionality, of course, is the benefit that you know for a fact that you'll only have to maybe produce 7 components. So yes, there might be some part data that you need to add in. But in this particular case here, of course, this is very minimal work in the sense that you just have to create 7 parts. So the next step here from a user standpoint is I'm going to submit this. And now this list of components gets added to my shopping cart, depending on the account or the user account that you're using, of course. Now, since I have this information here, I can now validate. So obviously the accepted vendor list that we received might not necessarily contain quantity. So we know we need certain parts that were approved, but we might not have the quantity. So what we can do in this space here is add how many parts we want. So I can say I want 2 of these, 3 of these, 4 of these, and so on and so forth. So you can actually allocate the quantity that you need for this particular project. So of course, in this environment, once that's accepted, what we can then do from the ePlan data portal environment, we can, if we go here to our device list, so device list navigator, what we can do here, there's a feature that will allow us to import these parts from the data portal into of course, into my parts database so I can import all 50 parts, which I already have done previously, so I'm not going to take too much time. But basically, it's just a question of clicking on this feature so that all those parts get downloaded into your parts database. And what you can do next is basically add those lists or those devices to your device list. By doing so, this actually adds the quantity, so you have the quantity used and the part number in accordance, which has already been imported into your parts database. And of course, from this space here, I can open up a schematic sheet and start to place components. So right-click here or drag and drop, whichever one you like, insert device. And of course, here I can start to place my components. And you'll notice that the spare account drops, right? The benefit of this feature functionality as well, from a user standpoint, is as I'm inserting these components, my list of devices now will let me know, okay, you're down to 0. This is the list of parts that you wanted with the quantity amount. But if I make a mistake and I actually insert a third one, so I add more than I previously stated, the system will flag you with a warning saying, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Take a look and see. And this actually also pops up in the error message check that you'll do in your project, if the case may be. So it's a good way to validate the parts that are being used in accordance to the allocated parts that you need for this project to make sure that you don't make any mistakes. So if I delete this here and I refresh this with F5, then I'm back to 0. All my parts have been used and so on and so forth. So that's one way to proceed on that aspect. And of course, the benefit here is that we grabbed that approved component list. And of course, from that approved component list, what ends up happening is that we now know which parts we should be using. So that's one aspect that we can use using the data portal to validate. Now, once we have those parts inside our ePlan environment, what we can do next is we can start to use them and build our project as I demonstrated. Another feature that we also have that can also be used in accordance or in correlation with the approved vendor list is to be able to import those into my project, into my device navigator. So in my project data under devices here, I have the import functionality. So this is another way of proceeding that you can use as well. Because obviously, in the case where you already have those parts in your parts database and you don't need to go through the data portal, you can always proceed in this order using that approved component list. So I'll select from that Excel spreadsheet, hit OK, insert. Now what's going to happen is that the system is going to validate those parts. And of course, is going to validate in accordance to the part database that you have in your environment. And it's going to let you know which parts get imported, which parts don't. Right. So one of these aspects here that we can do next is obviously import these in. And if I look at my device navigator here, those components will be added in. And of course, what we can use this for, maybe in a panel environment. So we do have cases where we have panel shops that receive component lists, but they don't necessarily need to produce the schematics. So we've had these cases where customers that are panel shops letting us know, listen, I don't need to do the schematics. I just basically need to do the design of the panel and hand that out to my customer with the list of components that he selected. So obviously in this particular case, since I imported that approved component list into my device navigator, I now have those components and I can actually go ahead and insert them. So I can actually go here to my 3D mounting layout navigator, see all the components that were imported in. This is just my validation with my device navigator. And I can actually go here, grab that component, drag and drop it into my panel design. And of course, due to the fact that I downloaded this information from the data portal, a lot of validation has been added to this device. And of course, this device comes in with maybe drilling information. So here I have the drill data showing me some drill information. And it might also contain connection point for my wires. So when I'm going to be routing this device, using my different tools available in ePlan in the Pro Panel space, this actually has a lot of benefits. So grabbing my approved vendor list, running it through the data portal, validating, checking if it's there, downloading those parts into my parts database, then importing that into my device navigator with those components that have been already downloaded and that I have accessible in my parts management environment will allow me to produce a product and design a lot quicker and a lot faster. Another benefit of using these tools, of course, is that after the fact, what I can do is once I have this done, I can export this information in an Excel spreadsheet, maybe to run it and validate for pricing and cost estimates. Using tools such as Proposal Works, if those there's other tools out there, but I'm taking Proposal Works as an example. What I can do is once that list has been generated, if I go to Proposal Works, I have the capability of importing an Excel spreadsheet. So this Excel spreadsheet being generated by the ePlan space, I can now run it through this environment here. And of course, having that information available, it'll now validate through the Proposal Works tool and give me a cost estimate as opposed in regards of the components that I've selected, if those components are available in this space. So it's a nice little way to actually grab that data, as we talked about in the first episode. And due to the fact that we had digitalized this data, I can now massage it and use it in multiple facets. I can, as you can see here, I'm using it in this environment. So the benefit, of course, is that having access to other tools and being able to do this seamlessly and very easily with other tools, it's simple for me to see here, running it through the Proposal Works. Of course, not all parts maybe are found in this environment. So I have fields here where I can start to input data, maybe margins of percentage, but this is all, unique to every user that has certain percentages and whatnot. But it's kind of giving me a rough estimate of the pricing to date. So this is the what is it? This is the manufacturer's, I guess, suggested retail price. But of course, there's percentages and stuff that you can play around with here in this space. But the idea behind this is basically grabbing that data, running it through other applications seamlessly and easily in this fashion. All right. So on that note, we'll move into the Q&A.
Sergio, thank you so much. Now we shall swiftly and quickly move into our Q&A segment. And the first question is, what kind of databases can I use?
So in the aspect of databases for part, we recommend SQL, obviously. So in the utilities parts management tool, we do have the capability of creating a parts management environment using the ePlan interface. But the file format that we store the data in can be either an Access database. Of course, Access is kind of making its way out. As we all know, we're hearing the news. And of course, Microsoft is focusing more on their SQL Express environment, which is actually free, so it's beneficial. And the queries are quicker. The indexing is a lot faster. Access also has a whole bunch of limitations. So all tools out there, whether it be Autodesk, whether it be Mentor, or any other tools out there, SolidWorks, they're all migrating over to SQL. So we recommend SQL, but of course you can use Access as well.
Thank you, Sergio. Next question. Is there a way to use the same database and filter parts with a set of criteria?
Yeah, so ideally, there are tons of filter capabilities in ePlan, and that's the benefit of having a tool that's database driven, due to the fact that indexing is possible and filtering is very possible. So using here like the parts management navigator, I do have a field-based filter that I can create, so I can filter out for specific vendors, specific part types. It's just the filtering capabilities are so vast that there's just so much you can do. So yes, filtering functionality is not a problem. All the properties are indexed, labeled, and identified. So when you use them for filter purposes in your particular navigators, it's super simple to do.
Thank you for the clarification. So, question number 3. What else can you do with ProPanel?
There's tons. I mean, we can actually grab that information from the ProPanel space, since we have that detailed part information that has been actually classified or identified by a procedure called E-class. Well, it's much more of a standard or a format, if you will, that is globally known. E-class is something that really allows the manufacturer to really have a high level of detail, like cavity size and wire direction and heat dissipation information. This benefits the user when they're using ProPanel to be able to export this information to different machine types. So ANSI drilling machines, copper bending tools, maybe pipe bending tools, creating drilling templates if people don't have access to these machines. And of course, this is beneficial. PDF, print on a plotter, tape over the backplate. No longer do you have to do masking tape, Sharpie pen, and rulers anymore. You have wire export capabilities. So we have from to data when we basically create our routes between components, and this detailed information can be exported. We also have even exports to the smart wiring application, which we will touch upon eventually. And of course, so much can be done in the ProPanel space to reduce the time, reduce the costs, and make you a more efficient company.
Thank you for an in-depth, detailed explanation on that. So the last question that we have, if there's any other questions, please shoot me a question or drop a question in the Q&A box. So the last question that we have is, does ProPanel need a separate license? Can I also combine the ProPanel license with an existing license or licenses?
Yeah, well, yeah. So it's very modular. ePlan has been known for its modularity, and of course, you can either buy it as a standalone package, or you can purchase it as an add-on. So this is all something that's relative to your needs and use. And of course, if you need additional features, can always be tacked on. So this could probably be something that you can look more or get more information from your local sales reps, and they'll be happy to fill you in with all the detailed data.
Sergio, thank you so much. We have another question. Give me one. What happens when a component is not on the data portal or on the data portal but does not have a 3D macro?
Right. So what happens is that the component itself does have width, height, depth. So ideally, what happens in the data portal environment is if since the manufacturer is responsible for creating the data, well, depending on certain manufacturers and their workloads, they might not put the 3D information, but they will put the width, height, depth. We do have an ePlan data portal standard that just came out. It's a new standard that all manufacturers have to abide by, and that's starting to trickle down. So a lot of the data in requirements has to now be enforced. So 3D information with height, depth, mounting clearance for heat dissipation zones and whatnot. But if you are creating a part from scratch that is not in the data portal, you can add width, height, depth. This is going to create a cube for the footprint, because ideally what's important for you is the footprint. And of course, this footprint, you can allocate an image file. So this texture section here will display the image into that cube on the face. So at least when you generate the model view to see the 2D representation of this 3D panel, you'll have a lot more detailed, clarified data. So you do have the capability of creating your part. If you do have a step file that you found through the manufacturer's website that is not on the data portal, you can import that 3D graphic, create a macro out of it, assign the logic information, and tie it to your parts database.
Thank you for that explanation, Sergio. Are there any additional questions at this particular time? Now that we have unfortunately ran out of time, this concludes episode 2 of A Digital Journey, a 12-part series exploring how to do stuff a little faster, hopefully a little better, and with a little less effort. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to follow us on LinkedIn at ePlanUSA. If you post, share anything about today's journey, do a hashtag ePlanDigitalJourney102, as this is the second amazing episode. Now, of course, we got to throw out some shameless plugs. If you have enjoyed anything that you have seen in today's episode and would like to know more, check out our step-by-step guide on how-to videos on epulse.com in the e-learnings tab, and the site is posted right here on your screen. And also be sure to check out our brand new Efficient Engineering podcast. The link is also posted on the screen. Sergio, thank you so much for being an amazing performer. Also, AKA Mr. Chatman, Christopher Aldrett. I have been your moderator, Andrew Fortenberry. Be good to each other. As always, see you next week.